and welcome to Who Corner to Corner podcast. My name is Jeff, and I'm joined as always by my good friend and my co-host, Paul. Hi, Paul.
Hello. Hi, Jeff.
How are you today?
Yes, I'm very well, thank you. I'm enjoying the rather lovely weather we've been having lately.
It's been warm and toasty the last couple of days, isn't it?
Very nice.
So we've got a very special guest with us today. It's a gentleman whose name many fellow fans will recognise from his work on shows such as Torchwood, the Sarah Jane Adventures, and of course Doctor Who. It's Mr. Phil Ford.
Hello. How are you doing?
You're very good. How are you today?
I'm very good. It's very nice to be here. Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Phil.
So, we're here to talk about your upcoming Target novel release for The Waters of Mars.
Very exciting.
We've got a load of other questions as well to go through. We want to find out all about you and your various...
I wasn't warned it would be a full interrogation.
Yeah, you thought you were here just to plug a book.
Lighted matches under my nails or anything.
You think you're here just to plug a book, but we want everything, Phil, the whole scoop and nothing less.
Yeah,
I'll help you where I can.
Yeah,
thanks,
brilliant.
mate. It's very kind.
So, we'll kick it off with something, hopefully easy to answer. So, when did your love of Doctor Who begin?
Oh my goodness. My earliest memory of Doctor Who is Patrick Troughton turning into John Pertwee. That's literally one of my earliest memories.
Yeah.
I don't remember anything about the first Doctor, and I remember the second Doctor here and there. But when I first really properly became aware of the show was the third Doctor. With the third Doctor, I was kind of said I kind of grew up with John Pertwee and kind of at the early days of Tom Baker, and then I kind of discovered Girls. And
we hear that quite a lot, actually.
I went away for a little while.
Well, then Doctor Who was dead to me.
Yeah.
Never dead.
That's it's still bubbling away in the background then.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. That's quite a common thing that happens, isn't it? When people get into it, then teen years come along, and it kind of fades into the background a little bit.
But then it usually comes back, like you said. You discover it later on in the years, and you think, "Oh wow, got all these shows there to catch up on if I wish."
I feel like I've been really privileged the way it's come back for me.
Yeah.
So I'm to actually work on a show that you watched as a kid is just phenomenal. And I kind of done that twice. I did it first with Captain Scarlet,
Of course, I saw you done that,
and then to do it on Doctor Who, and also to write for Sarah Jane, wonderful.
Yeah, that is dream stuff, though, isn't it?
Oh, it kind of felt like a kid in a sandbox, really.
Yeah.
Play with all these characters and everything else, wasn't it? Yeah.
So, how did you get into writing and discover that you enjoyed it and that it could also be a career as well?
Well, I'd always written. It was the only thing I was ever any good at, to be quite honest. When I was at I can remember writing my first story with chapters when I was still at junior school. And it was called Mission to Saturn.
That sounds exciting.
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah. Great
that sounds
title.
like a Captain Scarlet thing straight off, doesn't it?
Yeah. So obviously I'd always kind of been, a sci-fi kind of guy, even when I was very young. I mean, I'm so old. I can remember my dad getting me up to watch Neil Armstrong take those first steps on the moon. So there you go.
Wow.
Hey, privileged.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it was. So I kind of grew up in that kind of environment when I was a kid. By now, we were expecting to be in flying cars, silver suits.
Yes. I wanted that future. Yeah, trips to the moon, commutes.
Exactly.
To the moon.
Exactly. Yeah. So I had always written stories. And when I was at school, I was very lucky that I was encouraged by the teachers that I had to write those stories, which was just wonderful. And I'd always wanted to write. I mean, as I say, I didn't think there was really anything else that I could do.
Yeah.
I'm certainly never very good at maths. When I grew up in a mining town, and people from there just didn't go off and work in television or become novelists or what. So, but I thought that they stood a half chance of becoming journalists. So I was a journalist originally.
Okay, yeah.
And I did that for 10 years and went into advertising. When I was in journalism, I discovered that the last thing that journalism about is actually writing. It is. It's
word count.
It's really about getting on with people and interested in people and all of that. So that actually gave me quite a good grounding.
Yeah.
And as I said, then I went off to work in advertising and PR. And during that time, I was still writing. And at some point, I'd been writing novels again since I was a child as well. That Mission to Saturn was, although it had chapters, it was probably, I think each chapter was about a page long.
Yeah.
Still counts though.
But later on, I remember my dad bought me a typewriter for Christmas when I was probably something like 11 or something like that. And then I started kind of writing properly and writing longer stories and novels and stuff. None of which obviously ever got done.
but it's all grounding, I suppose. It's like a training ground for and finding your space, finding your voice, your style.
I'm a deep believer as well in that you're to write, really. And if you don't have that urge, if it isn't that kind of when I was a kid, my dad, having bought me the typewriter, would then complain that I wasn't going out messing around outside with it because I was always there bashing on the typewriter. Yeah, it's your fault. At some point, I had the dreaded writer's block that hit me. Yeah, and I still wasn't working as a writer. I was still in journalism at the time. And I decided to try and write something different. So I had this idea to try and write a TV script,
like a spec script for something.
Yeah, absolutely. I was very influenced by Inspector Morse at the time, and I kind of thought that I wanted to do something like that. So I wrote this thing about a retired detective who lived on a narrowboat. And solved crimes while singing in pubs and painting pictures.
Because why not? Do you know, when you put it like that, because I know where you're going with this, obviously, but when you put it like that, it just sounds, just pick this stuff out of the air. Because why not?
and so I spent a long time writing that, and I wrote 2-hour-long episodes for it. And along the way, at some point, I shifted jobs and wound up in Birmingham. And then I think probably must have become quite serious about trying to find a way in. And with the job that I was doing at the time, which was PR, I encountered, in Birmingham at the time, they'd got this organization whereby they encouraged the arts generally, but it was based on TV. Excuse me. And I got to do an interview with a woman called Dorothy Hobson, who was running it at the time, and I showed her the script for Church, which was that thing, and she really enjoyed it, and chose that time at which to quit her job, which was useful.
Oh wow!
Useful.
So you find an ally, and then she quits the job. Yeah,
and I still see Dorothy now. I saw her a couple of months ago at the launch of Russell's Nolly show. So, but basically, it was encouragement from various people, and you just go on the things trying to find yourself an agent. I'm relatively lucky in that I got an agent, and I think it took about 2 years after that for us to actually get my first gig, which was on Taggart.
That's what I thought. I looked up your list of work and everything, and it's a huge amount of stuff, isn't
massive.
it? Yeah. And I remember watching Taggart, you know, when I was younger, and you know, my mum loved Scotland and stuff, so you know, we always watched that. But you know, you did a big stint on Coronation Street as well. So what was it like working on something like Taggart, which is obviously you know, a sort of standalone
Adventure of the week,
Adventure of the Week type of thing, and then something like Coronation Street, which obviously multiple episodes a week, and I'm not, you know,
multiple writers.
Yeah, what's the difference on things like that? Yeah.
Yeah.
When I did Taggart, it was they were still 3-parters. So you know, I couldn't believe that. I was so lucky that I got a 3-hour gig straight off. And it wasn't that much longer. It was while I was still doing Taggart that I got the tail end of that I got the Coronation Street gig as well. And to be honest, both were totally surprising to me, because on the one hand, I knew that when I went into it, that actually writing a detective show like Taggart was a lot of work. Because of the plotting you have to do.
Yeah.
Bearing in mind, I was still relatively, I wasn't new at all of this at the time. And I kind of felt that I kind of inched my way through the whole Taggart thing. I mean, they were amazingly patient with me as well.
That's always a bonus.
Every time I would go in for a meeting, I was like, get fired. But then I got the Coronation Street gig, which when I joined it, I think there were 3 episodes a week. And there was a writing team of, I think, about 15 writers.
Okay, yeah.
Whereas with Taggart, basically you're on your own. You go off and do your meeting with the producers and script editor. On Coronation Street, we would meet every 2 weeks. Bearing in mind, we were writing episodes for 3 months, if I remember correctly. And we would sit in the writers' room there, which incidentally in those days was above, was actually on the street. And it was,
oh, really?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
If this was the old Granada corridor.
Yeah.
Before they shifted.
Moved studios.
Yeah. And our rooms were basically above the corner shop, down the rest of the and that's where we would go. It used to be.
That's pretty good.
Great fun, because in those days they used to do the Granada tour, and we'd come in after lunch. We would come in, and we were waiting to go into our offices, and the street would be full of tourists. And then they'd all be looking at us as we kind of went in through the back door. Corner shop. What are you doing?
That's brilliant. With the writers' room being on set like that, in a way, does that kind of help you get the vibe of the place?
Oh, absolutely.
It must have, mustn't it?
You're living it. You were living it. You were on the street. So it was a tremendous way of doing it. And say yes. So there was about 15 writers at the time. We would all come together for a meeting where we would discuss the thrust of this, where the stories were all going over the next 2 weeks, and it was one of the most entertaining places I've ever been.
How long were you there for?
I was there 5 years.
5 years. That's a good stint, isn't it?
It was
86 episodes.
Yeah, that's what it said. Yeah, 86 episodes. Yeah.
And some of those were hour-long ones. But it was just a great place to kind of hone the craft and because there were a couple of writers on the show. There was one writer when I started there who'd been there since it started.
Oh, right.
Wow.
And there were a couple of other writers there that had been there for decades, which sounds like an awful bad thing to say, like maybe turfed out years ago, but they were geniuses.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then there were other writers like me that just started, and others that had been there for 2 or 3 years. So you got this kind of really, really vibrant melting pot.
Mix of old and new on it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was such a great place to work. And so basically we'd thrash out the how the stories were going to run over the next 2 weeks. and then they had storyliners there who would then break those mad ideas down into 6 episodes over 2. And then usually 6, not sometimes, not always 6 writers would be selected to write those episodes, and you'd go away and you'd have gosh, I'm just trying to remember that. I think we had a week to write our first draft on that, but actually didn't, because in those days, so it's going to really make me sad.
Go on.
In those days, we didn't have email.
So
Of course,
we weren't still writing
Sticking
on
an envelope.
We weren't still writing on slabs and chalk,
etching into stone.
But we had a floppy disk, so you had to mail the floppy disk, which meant that really you had to mail it.
A
couple of days
before. Exactly.
So the advent of email was like
manna from heaven.
That's an interesting thing, isn't it? Like today, everything is so instant, but you know, anyone, the younger generation now, have probably got no idea what it was like. You know, like I remember having floppy disks and, you know, posting letters and stuff to people, and you know, even, you know, back, you know, in the early days of Doctor Who and stuff, you know, there'd have been no floppy disks or anything like that. It would be courier, and you know, it's all changed so quickly.
Everything would have been typed, and it would have been with a typewriter. And it would have been on paper. I mean, there was that copy of the first episode that went to auction recently. You know, and you see it, and it's this tea-stained, dog-eared thing, So I think things have moved on an awful lot. You know, in front of the camera and behind it.
Absolutely.
So it's quite interesting with these. Sorry, I just want to the Coronation Street then, because what you're doing there, I guess, is you're writing about people that slightly heightened, maybe slightly melodramatic situations and dramas, but nonetheless they're rooted in reality, aren't they? They're more grounded, and it's about relationships with people.
The best stories were grounded, you know, and you tried not. I mean, it's a fair comment to talk about melodrama, but you know, your characters really need to be believable.
Yes.
You don't tend to become melodramatic. But yes, obviously, I mean, but because it's on telly, you want to do heightened.
There are aspects.
But Coronation Street at its best when it doesn't do stories, when it just does normal stories, normal people, but it's entertaining. That's what we always tried to do then. And I can remember, it didn't happen very often, but sometimes you would, you know, your script would come in slightly light, and you needed, or there was something that had been put somewhere, and you needed to write an extra minute or 2 minutes, and you do it with a conversation. You know, and it would be. It wouldn't necessarily be particularly apropos to any of the storylines that we got, but it was just that interaction of people, you know, and that could be really great fun to me.
I'd love it when soaps focus on 1 or 2 characters, almost like when they get down to being like a stage play in some respects, where it's 2 characters being genuine to themselves and who they are and where they come from and where they want to go and how they interact with each other, whether there's a bit of conflict there, a disagreement or something, or whether they're in alignment. And talking about, so I love that. I think those conversations, those characters, they tell us so much in such a short space of time and get us to jump on board with them, to feel empathy with them.
That's very true, but generally it should be the same in any kind of drama.
Agreed. Yeah. So when you apply that, I guess, to the more sci-fi type stuff and more fantastical stuff, it gives that fantastical stuff a reality, a grounded base from which which makes it believable, or more believable, more relatable.
Absolutely. I mean, the thing with whatever sci-fi is it's complete fable. It's
exactly.
It's totally out there. The thing that defines good sci-fi for me anyway is the characters.
I agree.
The fact that you believe them and the fact that you like them. Have to like them, but some part of them But you understand.
You understand them. You're interested
you
in
can
them.
empathise with them as well.
relate to them, and you know,
Absolutely. You know, so, I always thought that was the main reason for the longevity of Star Trek, the original Star Trek.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, because you care about the characters.
Yeah, exactly. And it was that relationship between Kirk, Spock, and McCoy. You know, and that's what it was. It was in the original TV series. I think it also became the reason that the movies went on for
and the next generation as well. I mean, the family setup they have in that is critical to the success of the show.
Exactly. So whatever it is you're writing, I think the key thing is that the audience wants to spend time. They don't necessarily have to like them entirely.
No.
Well, we all love to hate a good bad guy, don't we?
Of course.
Well, Torchwood actually is quite a good example of that. I mean, from my perspective, actually, I didn't like any of the characters in that, but I couldn't stop. I mean, probably apart from Gwen Cooper, actually, because she's our way into that show, I think, you know, and but some of that stuff was quite kind of because obviously it was conceived as a more adult type show anyway, wasn't it? And they sort of took a few explored a few storylines which moved in that direction. Some worked perhaps better than others, but what was it like working on Torchwood? Because you did spend some time there, didn't you?
Oh yeah, I mean, I did Something Borrowed, which I love doing, you know, and it's one of those episodes that seems to divide fans right down the middle. So I think ever written.
Yeah.
Most episodes seem to do that, don't they?
Even more so now on social media.
Often incorrectly, you know.
Yeah, I came on board with Torchwood the second season. I kind of think the first season it was trying to actually find out
find out what it was and explore.
Exactly. And I think by the time we got to the second season, I think it knew what it was. It knew its situation, where it should go. And I originally came on board to do a story which was called The Deadline, which was about a haunted telephone line, which caused people to kill themselves.
Because why not?
Cheerful, yeah.
And then at some point, that was just after I think I'd written my first, after I'd written my first Sarah Jane, and then Russell was due to write the season finale of the first season, Jane, which was The Lost Boy, but he was also due to write the Doctor Who Christmas special at the same time, and really didn't have the time to do both of them. And I remember getting a call from Julie Gardner asking me if I'd be up for taking on The Lost Boy. Yeah, sure. Russell knew what the first 10 minutes of it were going to be, but he really didn't have a So he said, this is what I'm going to do. So blah, blah. So I went off to do that. Basically, while I was doing that, I couldn't do the carry on with Torchwood. So my script was kind of put on ice to come back to. And by the time I came back to it, all the plans for the series had completely changed. So and the deadline didn't fit in with those plans. So, but Russell said, "Well, we want to do this episode with the wedding, Gwen's wedding," and then he said, "Yes." I remember Russell saying, "I want you to do the wedding because you've done Coronation Street, so you've done a few weddings.
He's got experience." That's what he's thinking.
So anyway, so then I wrote the Something Borrowed, which was huge fun to write.
Was it?
But I mean, in terms of the differences in writing, I don't really think about the differences in writing. You know, the show that you're writing on, you know what that show is, and as long as you kind of write for that, I mean, it's kind of like I've been asked in the past, is it different from writing Torchwood to writing the Sarah Jane Adventures? Well, obviously Torchwood, was adult. That brings certain things with it. But I never really. But you accept that, you know that. But in terms of the the stories that we told on Sarah Jane, it wasn't necessarily this isn't a Sarah Jane story, this is a Torchwood story. You would just have about that. You bring the same toolbox.
Exactly.
Each job, basically.
I suppose, you know, that there can be an idea that could be adapted to fit either one to an extent.
Well, Russell always said that there's no story that you can't tell in a kid's show.
Yeah.
There's no way to tell that story, and he's absolutely right. And in in Sarah Jane, you know, the first story, The Eye of the Gorgon, you know, we have the woman who's suffering with Alzheimer's, and Russell was very keen that in our dealing with that idea, although this was a sci-fi show, that there shouldn't be some kind of miracle cure for dementia, you know, because there were kids who'd be watching it who had grandparents who had got dementia, and they did, you know, and it was a cheat to them. Just, you know, so you do a story which still has a happy ending, but not everything is nice.
It doesn't wave a magic wand and you know, cure the dementia aspect.
Absolutely.
So how did you become head writer for the Sarah Jane Adventures?
I just got a phone call from Judy Gardner. I was having lunch with my wife in a garden centre, and the phone went. It was Judy. Said, "We're doing a second series. How do you fancy coming back this?"
That's the kind of phone call you want.
I'll just finish my sandwich and I'll get back to you.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, because I had written 2 of the adventures in the first season, and I'd done a polish on one of the others as well by that time. So Judy kind of knew what I could do. So that's how it happened.
And how was it for you to sort of, you know, take that next step and become, you know, sort of, you know, a leader like that on the show, and, you know, to be doing that?
Just did it, really.
Just go with it.
By then, I mean, obviously I knew Russell, and by then I knew Julie very well. I knew all the production crew particularly well. So it didn't, you know, and I knew the show. I knew what we were doing and what it was.
And you had a confidence about it, you know, what you were doing and how it was all running, and so I guess it wasn't.
I think it's a different thing when you start working in that position on a show which has never aired.
Yeah.
I mean, when it's something that's completely new, I think I'd have been far more terrified.
Yeah. So what you're saying, Phil, is you let Russell do the you know, the scary stuff, and you know.
Get it going.
Yeah, sounds reasonable to me. Yeah.
And of course, that actually is serious.
Yeah.
That is the other thing. You know, Russell was always there as well.
Yeah.
And Russell is a wonderful person for giving you confidence.
Yeah, that's great.
And he's just he's one of the nicest human beings on the face of the planet. That's all there is to it.
Yeah.
And as far as writers are concerned, he is the man that you really want to be collaborating with.
Yeah.
He has such an understanding of writers.
Yeah.
And he has such an understanding of story as well. You know, just to be in a room with Russell when he's even if he's tearing your apart,
it's quite inspirational stuff.
Well, absolutely. I mean,
keep going.
I've seen Russell with another writer, and whose work wasn't going particularly well on this episode, and Russell was just able to take it all apart, give him what he needed to fix it, and just build the writer's confidence.
Brilliant,
inside of half an hour.
Which is what you need, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
in any job, any situation, that's the kind of feedback that you need. Yeah, this isn't going to work, but let's do this.
By shouting at someone and, you know, taking them apart, it does the opposite of what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
You know, the last thing you want to do is shout at a writer. Shout at anybody, because the point is on these shows, while there you are having those meetings in order to encourage the writer, whether they're doing
Yeah.
fantastic job, or if they're doing a less than fantastic job, to produce the best scripts.
It's the best thing. Yeah.
I mean, writing in television is very much a collaborative thing.
Yeah.
And it's wonderful for that. I've been lucky that I've worked with a lot of really good people in terms of collaboration like that. There may well be people out there that it's not so good to work with. I have no comment on them.
We don't need to explore that. That's fine.
But generally speaking, and particularly around who, I think it's always felt like a family.
Yeah, I was going to say it's very friendly, and everyone kind of knows each other and works together, and Russell and Chris and Stephen and you, and it's all very kind of family setup across all the eras of it.
Yeah, but it's not just the writers. I mean, everybody who works on those shows loves those shows.
Yeah.
I've always thought that shows in what goes on screen.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
definitely.
So let's move on to the main topic for a little bit. And you mentioned about collaboration there. So tell us a little bit about Waters of Mars and how that came about, what it was like working with Russell on it, and how that whole process went. Because what an incredible episode!
Very highly regarded story, isn't it?
We have a comment here. Actually, I'll ask you this now, and you can bear this in mind. So Max Blake on Twitter is one of our regular listeners. He says it's one of the most acclaimed episodes, and how does it feel to have people talk about your work like that? How do you kind of take on board those comments?
Yeah.
do you let it go to your head, or do you know?
No, you don't let. I mean, particularly on Waters of Mars, because it wasn't just me; it was Russell as well. And Russell's genius shines through on all of it. But it's lovely that it's kind of found that kind of joy in the people. Just bear with me, just 1 second.
Yeah, it's fine.
As we're talking about it,
well, the Hugo.
Yeah,
so that's the
look at that.
So that's the Hugo. Yeah, there it is. Yeah.
Sadly, for our audio listeners, you won't be able to see this.
Yeah, they're missing out again.
Displaying his Hugo award.
And importantly, on there, it's it's listed. It's me, but it's Russell and also Graham Harper as well.
Ah, yes,
so we just come back to the point that television is collaborative.
Yeah.
And everybody had a part to play in making Waters of Mars what
fantastic. But just on that,
unlike new novelization, which is all there.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I have to say, can I just, because you brought the Hugo out now, how does it feel? Because that is that award is for science fiction. It's a sci-fi. It's a recognition from the sci-fi community, which Doctor Who hasn't always had.
Yeah, and also I must say, like, in kind of mainstream awards events, a lot of the stuff that I like seems to kind of be overlooked because it's genre, or in a Marvel film or something, it's not proper acting and stuff like that, which, as we know, is nonsense. Like you've been talking about, Phil. If the characters in something, whether it's set in a chip shop or on a spaceship, if you don't relate to them, you have no interest in them, it's irrelevant what the setting is and things. And like, my wife will, she will wind me up and say, oh, Doctor Who's just nonsense, isn't it? And it's just spaceships and robots. But that's just the dressing for it. If you're not interested in the characters and things, like you were saying, it wouldn't still be going after this long. And same with Star Trek and all of that. And I think it's about creating characters and that people are interested in. And
it all, whatever kind of show it is, it all comes down to character.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. To quote one of the truths of writing, character is story.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's the good drama of any kind is driven by the characters that are in it.
And it doesn't matter where that's happening.
It doesn't. But no, it was nice to win it. I didn't expect to win it. So it it was wonderful.
Yeah, the Hugos are, they really acknowledge.
They're top, aren't they? They're the thing. I mean, that puts you up with the likes of Asimov and Heinlein and those sort of people.
Let's not go mad.
There you go. When you're thinking about, what was it? It's a journey to Saturn back there, and you win a Hugo Award.
Yeah.
So that's fantastic.
Now, did they make one for each of you? Does Russell have one?
We've each got one.
That's right. So you don't have to cycle it around.
It's my turn this week. Yeah.
Oh, it's fantastic.
You get the great thing is you also get a rocket badge as well.
That's really cool.
Which, to my knowledge, I'm the only one of any of us that ever wears it.
Quite right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Proudly displayed.
Russell's had a few more gongs than I have, so it doesn't really matter. But I'm proud of my little silver rocket.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, where did the idea for Waters of Mars come from? Was it something that Russell had, or you had, or it was a
both kind of dreaming up after?
It was one of those things. I think in the first instance, I think Russell had said to me, because originally it was going to be a Christmas episode, and Russell had said to me that he wanted to do something about it was set on Christmas Eve, and everybody suddenly disappeared from the world. And the original idea was that there was an older woman who was meeting her family to spend Christmas with them. At a posh hotel in London, and suddenly everybody vanishes, and the next thing is that she's running around this hotel, and there's just no.
I remember hearing. I read this maybe in the writer's tale. That there was a hotel idea.
I don't know, but anyway, there's a ding on the elevator, and it comes and there are these weird aliens in it and everything. And then the Doctor shows up and all that. But Russell felt it was a little bit sword and sorcery. I don't know.
Right.
This was after I'd gone away and done my thing with it.
Yeah.
A little bit sword and sorcery. So, fair enough. So we had this meeting down in the Bay, outside Starbucks. And it was me, Russell, Julie, and Gary, who was my script editor at the time. And Russell said that he wanted to do something which was near future. So it's kind of set so that the kids who are watching it would kind of think, well, I'll still be alive when this.
Yeah.
And on Mars. And it just so happened that I think that week, or certainly fairly recently, NASA had announced that they thought that they'd found evidence of water on Mars. And so basically the title was there.
There's your title,
Waters of Mars. And I think that, from what I remember, I think that was pretty much all we had.
Right.
The waters infect the base, the people in the base. And I went away and wrote up whatever I wrote up at that first point. The thing that I was always keen on was that what became known as the flood, ultimately, people who were taken over by the waters, were going to be really scary. I always wanted them to be really scary.
Yeah.
And I think I described them in the first draft as drowned zombies. And over a period of time, we had these various conversations about what the flood would look like.
Yeah.
I know that at one time there was talk of them being crystalline characters, CGI crystalline characters, and all sorts of stuff. Because I think at the time there may well have been some concern that drowned zombies might be a little bit too scary.
Yeah.
In the end, what did we get? We got drowned zombies.
Yeah, drowned zombies.
I couldn't be happier about that.
But the design on them, and they're just they are so scary. Like you're saying, I remember saying to people years ago, you've got to watch this episode. It is terrifying. Oh, Doctor Who's not scary. Well, you need to watch this. And the cracks and the way the water just pours out on the little, the way the eyes have changed. Sorry, go on.
Well, first of all, of course, on the front of the Radio Times, it did ask, "Is this the scariest episode of Doctor Who ever?"
It's always good. Always a good thing. Always a good plug.
And the other thing, of course, when you write these things, you write some kind of description. I can't remember, quite honestly, what the description was. But so an awful lot of that goes. The fact that they're scary goes down to the people who did the prosthetics.
Yeah.
Still don't quite know how they got the water running out of them.
It was great, wasn't it?
I remember watching. Yeah, I remember watching Doctor Who Confidential about it, and it was quite difficult for the actors, I think, because it was sort of a mouthpiece,
like a tube or something, wasn't it? That was sort of going in and
running through maybe a fake cheek, into the mouth and stuff, and so they had this kind of thing that looked like a black hole for the mouth, and then all the water just pouring out and stuff, and great work on it. And
it's fantastic. And incidentally, of course, this was the one time when Russell thought that something was too scary.
Oh, did he? He thought it might have gone a bit too far.
They were watching the dailies of it, and they'd got these, the zombie, they've got these blank ones. And it was felt that it was just too scary. And so it was the one time that they went down onto the set and changed something. Wow. Which is why in the TV episode, when Maggie changes in the isolation tank, her eyes don't change. It's covered in the dialogue. Why they haven't changed, but that was the reason they didn't.
Really?
It's funny because I was at Gallifrey in Los Angeles a couple of years later, and doing signings, and there was this boy that came up with his parents, saying how terrified he'd be. By it, that he'd slept in the bed with his mom and dad. And he was 9, I think, if I remember correctly. And later that day, this little girl came up with her mom to a signing, and she said, "Oh, I love Waters of Mars." I said, "Did it scare you?" She said, "No." No. So the little girl of the same age, scared of the
Do you know, it's funny that I was talking to a parent at school this morning about it, because been watching some films and stuff lately with my kids. I've got twin girls who are 5 and my son is 8. He'll get quite scared by things sometimes, and then one of the twins is just kind of all right about stuff, and then the other one will be like, "Can we watch that bit again?" And we were watching Honey, I Shrunk the Kids recently, bizarrely. And there's a fight with a scorpion and an ant in it, and my son got quite upset when the ant was killed, and I thought it was really interesting that it affected him like that. But the other twin, she looked round at me and she went, "I like that bit," and we were like, "Should we be worried?"
Your twins have psychopathic tendencies.
Why does Phoebe like all the empathy. Scary bits?
It's weird, isn't it? It's weird. Yeah. Kids' different reactions to these things, but it's one of these things that I come back to a number of times when in talking about kids' television, because there has been in recent years, this thing where producers, broadcasters can be scared of scaring kids, and kids love to be scared.
I think
you don't terrify them. You don't terrify them.
Just a little bit.
Exactly. And it dates back to the grand old days of Doctor Who.
Absolutely.
Isn't it? But we've always tried not to hold on the scares, and certainly in terms of things that I've done, because I think a good healthy scare, and I keep going back to the quote as G.K. Chesterton about slightly modified that G.K. Chesterton talked about the fact that, because it's talking about the importance of fairy tales, being that that children don't need to be told that there are monsters. Children already know there are monsters, but children need to see that those monsters can be defeated. That's actually said. But that's really the essence of certainly what we tried to do in Sarah Jane Adventures. And to a large extent, it's what Doctor Who is about.
Yeah, it reminds me of Capaldi in Flatline when he says, I'm the Doctor and I stop the monsters, or something like that. That kind of sums it up in many ways, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Except in this story, The Waters of Mars, the Doctor doesn't put it right, does he? The Doctor behaves differently at the end of it.
Yeah.
And actually, so let's think about this, right? Just dialing back a bit. You've got a very scary kind of physical look to the creatures, right? I thought they were going to be ice warriors originally. You're talking about Mars.
There's a hint, isn't there?
Yeah, I think they're mentioned, but then it's kind of moved on because we haven't seen the ice warriors back. Anyway, so you've got the physical aspects. You've also got what you see kind of in the distance when the transformations go. And this is, whether it's you or Graham Harper or just a general consensus of how this thing's going to be filmed. They're out of shot, they're slightly blurry, and you get those horrible kind of jerky movements while people are talking about day-to-day stuff each time, isn't it? It's happening in the background. That's what I find the most terrifying bit of all.
It'd be like Alien, isn't it? You don't see it all. It's in the shadows,
Exactly. And then you've got the unknowable nature of that enemy, right? It doesn't really reveal itself. It's got its eye on Earth, but and you can see how it could infiltrate and just dominate all of that. So that's got to be stopped. So the alienness of it, and then of course you've got the person who normally defeats the monsters actually making a decision not to get involved.
Yeah.
And then when he does get involved, he's even more terrifying than the monsters, and comes out with all this Time Lord Victorious stuff. And then you've got that shocker ending at the end, which is one of the bleakest.
See, this is the thing I always said about it. I said I'd always wanted the Waters of Mars to be scary. And it is, but I think an awful lot of people find that it's scary, not because of the flood, but because of the Doctor himself.
The Doctor goes, off the rails a bit, and thinks time is at his beck and call and everything, and
no one to stop him.
Yeah, no one to stop him, and
absolutely. And this is Russell's genius. This is what Russell brought to the story at the end of the day. After I'd done my drafts, it was Russell then added.
Oh, was it?
Right.
Yeah. And Russell, because in my version, the Doctor got everybody back.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And basically everybody was happy. It was a Christmas episode.
Yes. Yeah.
And I remember Nikki Wilson, who was the producer on the episode, telling me that Russell had got
tampered,
committing suicide, and I said, "You can't do that. It's Christmas."
it went out on Halloween in the end, didn't it?
Sorry,
it went out on Halloween, I think, in the end, didn't it?
It was Halloween. It was actually November the 21st.
Yeah.
Because I know this because it's set on November the 21st.
Yes, it is. Yes.
So do you remember they did that with the Halloween Apocalypse for the first episode of Flux? It took place on Halloween and aired on Halloween. It's quite nice when they managed to line up, the dates.
I'd always wanted to do a Halloween episode.
Yeah.
And still would love to do a Halloween episode.
Phil, if you've listened to any of our podcasts before, and Paul will back me up on this, I love a good spooky Who.
He does like a scare.
I do. And there's quite a lot on Big Finish, like Static and stuff like that. But the show itself needs a really cracking, spooky. We had Hyde. Hyde was good, and Knock Knock a little bit. But we need something really, really spooky.
Actually, Sarah Jane Adventures has done a few of those, hasn't it?
Yes,
with, the Trickster, and
the Trickster was great. That was Gareth's creation, the Trickster. He was always good. He was so spooky. He really was. But we also did the Eternity Trap, which was a story that I'd wanted to tell for a long time. The Eternity Trap had this guy, Erasmus Darkening, who was kind of an evil magician that was left over from the 16th century. Of course, he was an alien in this abandoned house. And the wonderful thing about I'd wanted to do that story for a long time, quite not necessarily as a main story, but there was this idea about people being trapped in the fabric of a building, because that's effectively what was happening. And I got the idea, and then Nikki, who was again my producer on that, we had to find a house that we were able to do. The only house that we could find to do it was partially derelict, and so we went to look at this house with Alice Troutman, who was the director on it.
Yeah.
And it was such a creepy.
You're getting vibes from it straight away.
Yeah, and then I had to go back to the script and kind of amend it because it was derelict. But everybody got kind of freaked out by that house.
Really?
Yeah.
Ooh.
It had definitely got something about it.
Something weird, yeah.
Which was wonderful because that just kind of adds to the.
Yes, you've got to bring that through the script.
No production work needed. It's all there,
Production work needed. Yeah. But no, I mean, the Eternity Trap was one of my favourite stories of.
Yeah. So that's a good one. I like that one.
How did you feel when you got the call about doing Waters of Mars as a Target book?
It was kind of like the same feeling that I got when Julie originally rang me to ask me to do Waters of Mars. And I said, but you'll have to write it with Russell. And I was walking around with a big smile on my face for the next week.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So no, it was great to go back to it. And the first thing I did was ring Russell and say, so I'm going to be doing this. Well, you've got to add this.
Oh, really? Still wanted to make sure you put this in and pop that in.
There is something in there that Russell suggested.
Yeah.
That I add.
Okay, so I started reading it over the weekend, and I must admit I haven't finished yet, but I'm about halfway through, and it's interesting reading the books because obviously you've got the picture in your head of the episode itself, but you've expanded things and you kind of get more into the Doctor's head, and the sense of kind of fear that you're building up through it works wonderfully, and it was really great. I haven't watched the episode for a while now, but kind of it felt fresh again reading it, and it was bringing it to life, and it takes something that I know, but it like I said, it's expanded it, and it's just kind of adding new life to it. And when I get home tonight, I'm going to get straight back to it because I got to get it done tonight and finish it.
I'm glad to hear you're enjoying it. But yeah, I mean, obviously that's the trick to doing something like this. It gives you the space to kind of go places you wouldn't have had time.
Yeah.
To have done. It's interesting you say you haven't watched the episode. I hadn't watched the episode since it originally went out.
Yeah, I was going to ask you. Oh, really? So since then, yeah.
Until they asked me to do this. So I went back to it and watched it, and I was quite moved by parts of it. It surprised me. And again, I got in touch with Russell after watching it, and I said that I'd been watching the scene where the Doctor is in the airlock,
listening to all the voice, the radio chatter.
Before that,
okay,
he's in the airlock and he's having a conversation with Adelaide, and I had started to cry. I'd forgotten that it was such an intense scene, and I remember I dropped Russell a line saying, I've been watching this, and he said, "I think someone's having too much of a good time." Which is absolutely right. I was, because it was such a blast.
Yeah.
Writing it again, and it was a joy to, I mean, when the in the episode the Doctor turns up on Mars, he just turns up on Mars.
Yeah, you've expanded on that, and I should say that we won't kind of spoil it for people, but you've given more kind of lead into that fits within. Where his character is at that time in his journey.
It's necessary because obviously that episode was kind of a bridge between the events of the dead
Planet of the Dead. Yeah, because and that's referenced as well, isn't it?
Exactly.
And the end of time
and the end of incarnation.
Yeah.
So I had to basically my research on it was starting with the Planet of the Dead, having to watch that, and Waters of Mars and the finale, and and the Stolen Earth, which is very
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
You got to the Stolen Earth part in the
No, I haven't yet. No, but I'm
Ooh.
looking forward to it.
Yeah.
See, we've only got one advanced copy between us, and
Yeah.
Jeff's nabbed that one.
Yeah,
so
so
I had to watch it on TV, which I did
Yeah.
and enjoyed it. I hadn't seen it for quite a while, actually.
Yeah, so I've been reading that, and I've been reading Kablam as well this weekend, which you know, much like what you've done, you know, it's fleshing things out and expanding stuff as well. And but they all do that, don't they? The Target books,
I
and
think that's what they're there for.
yeah,
I've said before in interviews, like the Target novels. When I was growing up, I can remember having the Target novels, and they were then kind of the equivalent of having, you know, DVDs.
yeah.
Oh yeah, they were the actual episodes enough, weren't they?
That's all you had back
Yeah,
then.
that's what I was telling my wife about it, because I showed her the books, and you know, she said, "Oh, these look really nice, don't they? You know, the covers, and you know, they're iconic, aren't they?" And I explained, you know, what the books were, and she you know, she didn't know anything about it, but she thought it was quite cool that you know, that was the only way you could experience some of them. You know, the lost stories and things once they'd you know broadcast. That was potentially it, wasn't it? You might never see it again at that point. You know, you didn't know what would happen with repeats and video and all that kind of stuff. You know,
And in some ways, the Target books were better as well.
Yeah, you've said that, haven't you, Paul, about stuff? Yeah.
But that, I mean, that's said.
Involved.
Mm.
You know, because it's all going on in your head. You know, and I used to love reading them as a kid.
Yeah.
And so you know, it was great to go back and actually, you know, do the Waters of Mars like this.
Was there any? Oh, sorry, Paul. Go ahead.
I was going to say, you've got your own Target novel now, a Target novel with your name on. Which, when you think back to when you were a kid, getting those things out of the library and all the rest of it,
I'm still in that sandbox.
Yeah. So when you started writing the book, was there anything, and you'd rewatched the episode, was there anything that you wanted to add or anything you wanted to change that you know that you couldn't do originally?
The one thing that I changed was undo the thing that was changed. In as much as, because it's a book, you don't have to worry about people getting too freaked out by those eyes.
Yeah.
So everybody has those eyes.
Yeah. Don't you describe them as it's like a pinprick of black on them, and the description of the flood in the book is it, you know, like they were 10 out of 10 scary before, you've just turned them up to 11 now, you know.
Thank you. That's you couldn't say a nicer thing. I mean, that my editor on the book said the same thing, because I remember saying before I started, he said, "You do realise, you know, this was one of the scariest Doctor Who's ever. You know, you're going to have to do that in the novel." Yep, you did that.
yeah, you did it, yeah. And
it's a funny thing, isn't it? Because I mean, when you're in terms of TV, it's a much more visceral form of horror. But when you're doing a novel, whether it's a novelization of a Doctor Who or whatever it is, the horror has to be psychological as well.
Yeah.
You know, so to some extent, you have to kind of examine what those people who have been turned by the flood, what they may be going through inside.
Yeah.
And I kind of do that a little bit with Maggie when she turns, but also I kind of do it through the other's perspective in terms of looking at these people and looking at what it's like. So I'm glad you found it scary still.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. So you know, obviously we've had it early, but I'm excited.
You've had it early.
Yeah, sorry, I yeah, but I'm excited to see what other people and Paul, you know, think of it when they start getting their copies next month.
So am I. I can't.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I was bowled over by the fact that people have always thought that the TV story was so scary. I've always enjoyed scaring people. So
yeah, that is the remit of Doctor Who.
I say it again that, you know, Russell's genius with the Doctor is possibly even scarier than the flood. But
well, it's close, you know.
but that's another thing. Talking about the fact of writing the novel, because you also have to get inside the Doctor's head.
Yeah, which you do.
That transformation of the Doctor to Time Lord Victorious on screen happens in about
It's pretty quick.
Yeah.
When everything's blowing up around him, when he gets onto the, but you kind of, when you're writing the novel, you actually have to kind of dig a bit deeper.
Yes.
Find the rationale for it, and
exactly to kind of understand. On screen, in terms of image, we understand.
Yes, there's a lot of visual storytelling, isn't there, to kind of make things move.
Yes, on the screen is all about the image. And that telling the story, you understand what the Doctor is going through while everything's going to hell around it.
Yeah.
In the novel, you kind of need to actually get inside his head.
Yeah, and there's a bit. There's a bit near the beginning where he's thinking about companions, and like I was saying, you kind of expand upon where he is in that in his character arc, and I think it will, like I said, I've only read about half so far, but it's already kind of helping to justify and explain more of where he goes in the story. It's like you say, you don't get all of that on screen. It all works, doesn't it? But it happens quite quickly. So I can tell you're already kind of setting that trail towards it.
I think it is kind of there on screen in as much as that somebody who's watching Waters of Mars has watched The Dead beforehand.
Yeah.
And so there are kind of like those signals are there, so that you understand what's going on. So it works on screen. I just, the beauty of a novel is that it just gives you that much more space to explore.
Yeah, and you've got no budget limits either.
Well, that's
always good. Yeah.
Just got to hit the word count and the deadline. That's it.
Yeah. So, do you have any other Doctor Who ideas that haven't come to life yet?
Oh, there are many.
Yes.
I'm not sharing them with you.
We were hoping for an exclusive there. We put on the show.
So, have you kept up with the show since you
Yes, Yes, and I'm really looking forward to the new incarnation and the return.
Yeah, well, two of them, yeah. I've got double whammy to come, haven't we? Yeah.
Not that far now.
Just
Where are
Russell.
we?
Yeah.
July, August, September, November-ish, if it's for the anniversary.
But
4 or 5 months.
4 or 5 months, yeah. So exciting times. Yeah. Have you been privy to anything? Of what's going on?
No, and if I were, of course,
I was just going to say you could tell us when we stop recording.
Nobody ever does.
Seriously, I know nothing. I know nothing. In fact, I probably even know less than out there.
Because they're deliberately not telling you.
Yeah, not telling you. Yeah,
making sure that you don't know anything.
That's kind of the way I like it. I want to be.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah. So, what's your favourite ever episode of Doctor Who?
Oh my goodness.
There's a question.
Well, I can only go by the first one that pops into my head, which is
Waters of Mars.
Yeah.
Sorry, it was the second one that popped into my head. I love the Green Death.
Oh, well done. Yeah.
The Green Death, closely followed by the Demons. See both John Pertwee.
I love the Demons. Yeah, that's a spooky Who. A little bit.
Absolutely. Yeah. Spooky Who. More modern. I love Midnight.
Yeah.
That's a nice character piece as well, isn't it? Very intense psychological terror.
Absolutely. Written over a weekend or something like
Apparently
that.
So. Yeah.
But that's Russell for you. So and Blink, obviously, as well. But which is your favourite Who?
I know. Yeah.
I think you really have to go with your head. The first thing that pops into.
Yeah, it changes, doesn't it? It's whatever's been on your mind lately, or you've been watching, and it's tricky to pinpoint exactly one favourite.
There's so many of them.
Yeah.
I mean, he asked the question anyway. So.
Yeah. It's a nice challenge, that one. Yeah.
So which is your favourite?
Why don't you go first,
Again,
Paul?
Apart from Water with Mars.
So I can think.
Mars, obviously.
Well, I really liked Resolution with Jodie's Doctor. I thought it was a cracking Dalek story, and I've watched that one, a number of times. I loved Flatline and Listen with Capaldi. I always like The Girl in the Fireplace. I really like it when the show plays with, the time and jumps around, travels around, stuff like that. I'm already starting to. There's tons of episodes. So we've been doing this series for the podcast called Essential, where we look at different doctors and we each pick 5 episodes that are not necessarily like essential to get an arc from the character or something like that, but ones that we feel kind of individually sum up the doctor, the best. And every time we do these recordings, we've both had a list, haven't we, Paul? And then we start talking, and the list ends up changing as we go. Oh, I've just remembered about this one. I'm going to put that back in as well. So it always changes. Yeah, Paul, what would you say your absolute favourite is?
Oh, do you know what? I do have an absolute favourite, and it was from the very first day I saw it when it was broadcast, and it still is, The Caves of Androzani. Because I just love it totally. And then things like Legopolis, I love. I mean, any season 18 story, The Leisure Hive, I love to bits. Warrior's Gate, another one. In the modern series, Resolution. I love Resolution. Hour of the Doctor, the most recent. I love it to bits with everybody coming in from the old show. Love all that, and the stories just punch the air exciting.
We spoke to Colin Baker.
We did.
Was it the week when the episode was coming out? And we said, so Colin, we've heard that there's...
he deliberately, didn't he?
We said, we've heard that there's some classic doctors are going to appear in this episode.
Yeah.
Can you shed any light on that? And he outright lied to us about it.
He did. He said, well, it'd be nice if we'd have been invited.
Yeah, he said, I didn't get a phone call.
If they'd have invited the old doctors. So we kind of left it thinking that might have been a bit of a sore point, but he's very clever, old Colin.
And then when I was watching the episode, I basically jumped off the sofa and went, he lied. And my wife went, what are you talking about? And then I had to explain it all. So, yeah.
He was thinking of you.
He was, yeah. He was saving that, yeah.
He was indeed.
Much more enjoyment for you if you didn't.
Well, do you know what? Yeah, we've talked about that a lot as well. And, having secrets and surprises and stuff is so much more rewarding, I think, than kind of knowing everything in advance. And, so, yeah, to have those things kept hidden, is great. That you only get that first viewing once, so to have a genuine jump off the sofa surprise is worth it. So you worked on Wizards versus Aliens as well, which you did with Russell too, didn't you?
I created it with him, yes.
Yes, yeah. So how did that come about, and what was it like doing all of that?
Well, Wizards came about because of Liz being ill. Really.
Yeah.
We knew that she was ill, but we didn't really expect it. We didn't think that as it turned out to be. And Russell and I talked about we weren't going to be able to film because we'd got 1.5 series in the can. Yeah. Because the kids were getting older.
Yeah.
Get stuff so we weren't going to be able to go back to do the end of that series, which would be series 5, I think. So Russell said, can we come up with another idea for a show that we can just do, just a one-off show that we'll film next year, so that basically that everybody down at Rothlock in Cardiff is a place to work. And Russell was living in LA then. And I went over there and we had dinner, and we talked through a few ideas, and then there was and then he said, I know that CBBC would quite like something to do with magic. He said, but every time I kind of think about it, it just comes up with Harry Potter,
sword and sorcery.
Exactly. And I said, because it was an idea that I'd had for donkey's years, and it was simply an idea, it wasn't a story, it was simply an idea, and it was Wizards versus Aliens. And Russell's eyes lit up.
I can imagine, actually.
And we've always said it was one of those, lightning in a bottle moments. And basically that was it. But that was pretty much all I'd got. And so it was then a case of going away and actually making that idea into a story.
Yeah. Fleshing it out and working up storylines and people.
Which took a while.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah.
But it was great. I loved Wizards versus Aliens. You know, and of course Russell said that, and that's what we'll call it.
It does what it says on the tin.
Yes, exactly. And then we had a few more drinks, and that was why then we could which way around it went. Yeah. Because then when we originally started writing, it was called Aliens versus Wizards.
Oh.
But because we simply couldn't remember. And then I remember, I remember pitching it, and I wouldn't have pitched it as Aliens. It was Wizards versus Aliens.
Yeah,
that was the idea I had in my head.
That rolls off the tongue, yeah.
So anyway, so then it was just a process of actually finding the story. And I think it was Russell's idea that the aliens, the Necros, were looking for magic. You know, the Earth was the last planet that had any magic on it. We just really kind of went away from there. But I loved doing it. We did 3 seasons of it.
Yeah.
It
turned into its own entity, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. Yeah,
like for 3 seasons, which is a good crack.
It did, and of course it was the same format as Sarah Jane, which is they were 2-parters. And you know, I remember when we were doing Sarah Jane, a lot of people said to me how they, you know, adults, because there were many adults watching it as kids, how much they enjoyed it because it was, you know, like classic Who. It had lots of cliffhangers in it. And I think at that time, a lot of people who were enjoying Doctor Who did kind of miss those classic cliffhangers that we had as kids. So Wizards was always going to be that. And of course, from quite early on, Russell started saying to me, because I'd done this story for the final season, final half of this last season of Sarah Jane, the 13th Floor, in which Clyde and Rani find themselves locked in this alternate reality for years and years and years, and they have this kid, which then became the 13th Floor on Wizards versus Aliens. And I remember when I wrote it, the version that I wrote for Sarah Jane, ringing Russell up and saying, "Look, I've done this. I've come to the end. The only ending that I can find, and this is going back to how we were talking about telling stories, stories for kids. The only ending, the only believable ending to this is so bleak." I remember Russell saying, "Oh, make it bleak as you can. I love bleak." And so it was very poignant. It was 13th Floor that we did for Wizards was one of my favorite stories that we did, partly because it was so difficult to film, because we filmed the other world version of it in the Forest of Dean.
Which
was supposed to look beautiful, and we were filming it after like months of torrential rain.
It's all destroyed.
Quagmire. It was there.
Just the perfect place to roll in cameras and everything.
Exactly. But it on screen it looked beautiful. Like a fairyland, and it was quite amazing. So again, hats off to all the production team on the show.
Bit of camera trickery, camera magic. So what have you been working on at the moment? What have you been doing lately?
I'm stuck in development on a bunch of stuff. I've got I'm not really sure what I should say in answer to that. Put it this way, I haven't been sitting around twiddling my...
Yes, I didn't think you would have been.
Sometimes television can take an age to actually happen. I've got a show that that I was working on for a while, and we're now out selling it, which is a very adult vampire thing.
Ooh, okay.
Very different as a vampire show as well.
Cool.
So a lot of big hopes for that.
Great.
Vampires keep coming around, don't they? They're
Yeah.
kind of cyclical. They never go away, should I say?
When we first pitched it to the people who were putting up the money for it, that was the reaction that we had there.
Was it?
You can't go wrong with a vampire.
No. They are
always popular. Yeah.
Very
and
easy.
I think the best vampires are those which kind of reflect certain insecurities or fears that we have at the time, and that's part of why they prevail. I think, back in the old centuries, it was that they represented the fears of everything that you couldn't be, everything that terrified you, whether it was repressed sexuality or, whether it was any kind of difference that you had or something like that. We cannot go into that dark place. We can't pass beyond that pane of glass. And of course, that's the demon from outside the window, isn't it? Looking in, who has to be invited.
Yeah.
So you welcome those.
It's funny, since we are talking about vampires, that going back to that thing about whether you can scare kids and whether it's right to scare them, and your kids, the different reactions to that. I remember the first time I saw Dracula, the 1958 Hammer.
Yeah.
Oh yes.
And I was probably a lot younger than I should have been. And I can remember having nightmares about it.
Yeah. I love those Hammer.
Blood red eyes.
Yeah. The Universal horror pictures as well, all of those.
I
love them to bits.
I love them. They didn't scare me, but I do love them. Yeah. But when I'd been even before I saw Dracula, when I was at infant school, my mom was the crossing lady. She was the lollipop woman.
Oh yeah, brilliant.
And we only lived over the road from the school, so which meant that I was always first at school, and
useful to have connections.
Yeah.
And so I would have been, God, how old are you when you're at infant school? I can't remember.
5 to 10, something like that.
Even earlier.
Infants, I think I was about 7 or something like that. Anyway, this one morning, Mom crosses me over, takes me. So I'm the first kid in the playground. Always the first kid in the playground. And this one day, out of nowhere, I was attacked by a vampire. this other kid with this mouthful of plastic fangs out of nowhere, and scared the living Jesus.
I'm not surprised.
Really did. And I ran out of school, back to my mum in tears.
Oh no!
And looking back on it, I mean, never mind the fact that it was something like 8 o'clock in the morning and brilliant sunshine. And
all. Well, when they attack you, you don't think about the rules, and hang on, you shouldn't be here.
It should be dark. We should be in a Gothic abbey and candlelight somewhere.
Yeah.
But looking back, because I've always been fascinated with vampires, and looking back, I'm convinced that was what set me on the role of my life, probably. The fascination with things that scare people, as well as a fascination with vampires, was down to that lad that came at me with a cheap set of fangs.
Yeah, you owe him. Yeah.
I probably do. Yeah.
Have you seen what we do in the shadows, the film?
No, I've never seen it.
Is it good?
Yeah, it is good. So I love Buffy and vampire stuff in general, and what we do in the shadows takes all the kind of the rules and stuff and subverts them. So this group of vampires, they hit the town and they want to go to the nightclub, but of course they need to be invited into the club. So they stand there with the doorman and pathetically trying to get invited in, and I was laughing at it, and my wife was watching as well. She said, I don't really get it, what's funny about it? And I said, well, they have to be invited in, and they can't just walk in, and so it took all of these things that you kind of take for granted with vampire stuff and the stereotypes, and it flipped it all. So I recommend watching it. It's very funny.
I should really look.
Good. So Phil, we've got a couple of quick fire questions and then a little game for you to wrap up with.
So nearly over. Don't worry.
Yeah, nearly over. So Fraser Gregory, who's one of our Twitter listeners, says quarks or crotons.
Oh,
Protons.
Okay. Sophie the Otter, which is a great username. She says
Fraser might be a little bit disappointed by that answer.
Yeah,
He's big on quarks.
yeah, he was leaning heavily into quarks there.
Did he include a gif of a quark or something?
He might have done, I think. Yeah. Sophie says, if you were a biscuit, what type of biscuit would you be?
Chocolate hobnob.
Great.
Oh, without any thought, I'm a chocolate hobnob.
Have you thought about that before? Got writer's block on something. What would I be if I was a biscuit? So,
you got me through many a writer's block.
Yeah, and they are a good choice as well. I'll back you up on that. So our little game is the Grand Serpent's asteroid. So for anyone who doesn't remember, the Grand Serpent got left by the Doctor at the end of Flux on a little asteroid floating in space.
Asteroid floating in space.
So if you were to be put into an eternal isolation imprisonment in the lonely depths of space, what would you choose from the following options? So one comic or book?
Oh, comic.
Okay, which comic would it be?
Oh, God.
And I'll give you. It doesn't have to be one issue. It could be, a collection.
It would be all of the TV 21s that I grew up with as a kid. Because again, they were like our version of DVDs and
Yes. Yeah, and we saw all those Dalek stories in TV 21 as well, didn't we?
Yeah.
Flying Daleks on their little hoverboard things and what have you.
Yes.
Yeah. And they had names, Zeg and stuff.
Yeah, I'll allow that. It's one thing. Even if it's like 1,000 issues, you can.
That's all you've got, mind. Just the TV 21
just,
comics. So you've got to be comfortable with that.
One album.
Space. Oh, one album.
One album. Oh,
yeah,
that's a difficult one.
I can literally see the cogs going round in Phil's mind.
For anyone who's listening, not watching, Phil is thinking hard.
I am thinking hard. That's a difficult one because it's one of those things like when you say, what's your favourite episode?
You're not going to like the upcoming questions then.
Fair enough. One album. It would, it's going to be A Night at the Opera. Wait.
Ooh.
Okay, good choice. Yep. Okay.
Good one.
One horror film.
The Exorcist.
Talking about terror, I cannot watch that ever.
Really?
I've seen it once, and admittedly, again, I saw it far too young. I was 12, right? And my mum put it on because she thinks these things are ridiculous. She'd already seen it and thought it was just ridiculous. It's clearly, prosthetics or, puppets, and it's really low budget and it's bad and it's awful. Yeah, I watched this and I wasn't scared watching it. But afterwards, going to bed, I could not sleep. And the worst thing actually was not so much all the physical head rotating stuff, but the start of it, when there's all the stuff going on in the loft and you just hear the bits. That still scares me now. I cannot hear Tubular Bells from Mike Oldfield without getting the fear coming back in me. Can't do it.
Do you know, I remember going to watch it when it was re-released some years ago, and there was some youth sitting behind us, and they were chatting all the way through.
So I've got my nervous tick going on now, even thinking about it.
And they were like, "Oh, this is rubbish," blah blah blah. And as the film goes on and it gets scarier, the chattering, quieten down.
I tell you the thing about The Exorcist was, it was. I mean, the first time I saw it, I was probably 17, something like that, and I watched it at a mate's house, and he didn't live that far from me, but I remember walking back to my house in the dark, pretty freaked out. The thing that freaked me out about it wasn't the pea soup or heads revolving or anything like that. There's as we know, the Exorcist is famous for its subliminal. And at the end of the exorcism, there's a subliminal shot of Pazuzu, the demon.
I'm not even thinking about it. I'm just literally staring into space while you're telling this.
Paul's gently humming to himself.
And you see, the thing about it was because it was it's on there for half a second.
Yeah.
And literally for years, I wondered if it was actually a part of the movie or if it was in my head.
Oh, really?
I can remember when Mark Kermode's book about it, because Mark Kermode was the So when that came out and I first saw it, the first thing I did was go through it to see if there was a photograph.
Freeze the yeah.
That's still a Pazuzu, and thank God it was there.
Yay. It wasn't just your twisted imagination.
I had never been able to watch it after that until I found out.
Till you confirmed.
But actually, that was the movie. So,
Brilliant.
So, yeah.
Okay, what sci-fi movie would you pick?
Oh.
You know, I love Wrath of Khan.
Yes.
The number of times I've watched that movie, I just love it. Or Terminator, you know.
Yeah.
But
I
think to get a lift, even though it's not so much of a buzz at the end, I'd say Wrath of Khan. I love those Star Trek movies.
That's the one with the earwig thing, isn't it?
It is. Right at the start, put it in Chekhov's.
I remember watching that when I was younger, and actually that bit was like, oh, you know, I couldn't watch that, and it was the same with it's not sci-fi, but when Michael Jackson turned into the werewolf. In Thriller, I had to close my eyes at that bit and say to my mum, "Is it done? Is it done?" And yeah, it's funny. My kids have watched a bit from Thriller where they're all zombies dancing. Yeah. One of them loved it. The other was ambivalent, and one of them was scared.
It is quite a scare.
Yeah,
it plays on that those images, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
I haven't seen this in years, but I loved it when it first came.
Yeah, it's despite the terrifying werewolf transformation, it's a great film. What fantasy movie would you take?
Oh, I suppose it's Conan the Barbarian.
There's a bit of an Arnie theme going on here.
Yeah.
Arnie's not in Star Trek 2.
No, but he's in Terminator, obviously.
Yeah, he is.
Have you watched the Arnold documentary on Netflix?
I haven't actually. I only last night noticed it and thought, oh, I'll have to have a look at that.
I recommend it. It's Fubar. Yeah, great fun. Yeah, really enjoyed it. Yeah,
it was much more than Citadel.
I watched the first episode of Citadel. I completed Fubar, so make of that what you will.
I watched a recommendation of Citadel. Largely because of Stanley Tucci. I managed to watch 2 episodes of it.
Yeah, I just found I understand things are dramatic and they can be kind of dark and things like that, but I think you need some life in something, and Citadel didn't have that, and for me and Fubar it's not dark at all really.
I don't have some dark parts when that guy's being interrogated and as the power saw comes out.
Jeff sees that as light entertainment film.
But I thought that Arnie, for he's obviously not the world's he doesn't have the greatest range, but he was clearly loving it and really enjoying it, and that kind of came across to me as well on screen, and I just really enjoyed it. And the documentary is brilliant. My one complaint was that it could have been longer. I wanted to know more and hear him talk more, because what an interesting guy is all the
fascinating guy.
Yeah.
I mean, I used to bodybuild years ago.
Did you?
When I was a much younger man. And the guy who ran the gym that I went to competed with Arnold.
Oh, really?
His first competition over here, because he trained over here.
Yes, he came here. Yeah.
And he competed against Arnold in his first competition.
Wow.
So Arnold's always been there.
Yeah. Yeah, well, for me, Terminator 2 is the reason I got into filmmaking. I watched that when I was 11 or 12, and it blew my mind, and I thought, who is Arnold, whose surname I can't pronounce? So I want to know more about him, and then I discovered who's this James Cameron, and that's where it went for me. So I've always got time for an Arnie film. So recommend it.
Have you seen Maggie?
Yes, yeah. So that was a bit different for him as well. So I don't know if you've seen that, Paul. His daughter gets infected with sort of a zombie virus, and I think they try and find a cure. But he did a couple of films like that and Aftermath, where they weren't really action films, and he was
keen on Aftermath.
Yeah, I preferred Maggie. And he was trying something a bit different, pushing himself a bit.
I think it worked.
They did. Yeah, they were both really good. Maggie particularly, but
never really got much of exposure. I don't think.
No, they didn't. Because I was thinking about it, like he never really ended up doing kind of direct-to-video stuff like, you know, Bruce Willis and Van Damme did, but he did these kind of smaller films that, you know, I think he'd probably reached a point in his career where he thought, I've conquered the box office. I want to try something a bit different for me now. And
yeah, well, he'd done. I mean, as you say, he is a remarkable man. I mean, he was a millionaire when he made Hercules.
And that was through property investment and stuff, wasn't it? Yeah. But have you read his autobiography?
No, I haven't.
So it's also fascinating. But one of my favourite things in it was there was this rumour that Arnie owned a private jet, and it was all in the papers and stuff. And he said, I didn't own one. But I'd heard that a lot of airlines lease their jets. They don't actually own them. So he looked into how much it cost to buy a jet, what an airline would lease it for per month. So he bought a jet, leased it to an airline, and made more money through the leasing.
Brilliant.
That's a smart guy.
Yeah, you know, people thought he was just muscles and stuff, but there's a lot going on there, you know.
What's he called? What's his autobiography called? 'Cause I
think it's called Total Recall.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a few years ago it came out, but yeah, I'd also recommend that. It was really interesting, yeah. So yeah, I could talk Arnie all day, but I'm aware we've all got other things to do, and you know.
I have another interview to do in a bit. So.
Okay. Well, I got one last question for you then in our little game.
Final thing to take with you into the endless void of space.
So, what one season of Doctor Who would you take to your asteroid with you?
Oh my goodness!
Ooh.
It's going to have to. I don't know which season it would have been. But it would have to be. It would have to be John Pertwee.
Yeah, I wondered if it might be. Yeah.
Would it be the one with the Green Death?
It would be the one with the demons.
Yeah.
The demons season.
Which may be the same season.
8.
I don't know. I really
season
don't.
8, I think.
Yeah, I think it might be.
It is.
I
End of
can't
season
remember.
8.
Yeah.
So I'm good at shit like that. You know?
Yeah. Paul knows all of that. Yeah.
I have no life. See, whereas you went and got interested in girls, yeah, that never happened to me. I just stayed with Doctor Who forever.
There's time for you yet, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah. You're young still, Paul. Yeah.
Oh, thanks, darling. Yeah.
Right, well, Phil, we'll let you go. This has been an absolute pleasure chatting to you.
It's been a delight.
Congratulations on the target waters of Mars. It's absolutely brilliant. I can't wait to finish it. And you know, for our fellow listeners, when they get their copies, I hope you all enjoy it and get as scared and as unsettled and as creeped out as I have been by it. And we look forward to seeing what's next from you. You know, keep in touch and let us know what you're up to, and hopefully. Brilliant. Thank you very much. Hope to chat to you again soon.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Phil. It's been a pleasure.
Lovely.